All right, guys, I've got some bad news for you tournament fishermen out there, and that is I think kayak fishermen have had it right this whole time. Now, what exactly did they have right? Well, that's what I'm planning on discussing with you guys in today's video. If you had to answer this question, how would you answer? If you had to have the same quality of fisheries in 10 years that you do now, would you like it to be that way, or would you rather it be better? So I'm gonna ask my son what his thoughts are on the future of fishing. So when you grow up, do you wanna catch big fish or little fish?
Big.
Okay, when you grow up, do you wanna catch a lot of fish or not many fish?
A lot.
Exactly. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here is the future of fishing. We got to do what's right by them. So now it's your guys' turn to comment below with what you would like to see in the next 10 years as far as fishing quality and quantity go on your local bodies of water. Well, that's exactly what brings me to the point of this video, and that is kayak fishermen were forced to develop a new format of fishing and tournament fishing. They had to have a new way of documenting their fish catches, so they came up with the catch photo release format where fish were judged off of length and then immediately released back into the environment that they came from. Now, as the fishing industry kind of caught on to this more of a conservation mindset, Major League Fishing came out and they do the format where the fish is caught, it's immediately weighed by a boat official, and then it's immediately released back into the environment that it came from. What I'm about to talk about is the overall concept of why I think that the traditional style of tournament where fish are caught, put in a live well, boated off to a new location, weighed in, then released, really just needs to be something of the past. Now, all right, now stop. I can hear all of you guys out there whining through the lens. I can hear your little complaints like, oh, people are cheating. Like, if they're just taking photos, people can cheat, you know. But you know what, guys? Like, no matter what you do, people are gonna find a way to cheat the system. Just look at this whole scandal with the walleye anglers and them putting lead in the fish bellies and all that stuff. Like, I know there have been multiple scandals where people have found fish that are in cages and barrels that have been hidden, all that stuff. So I really think that at this point, the kayak fishermen and that whole community has kind of worked through a lot of these things. And yes, you will have your onesie twosie things where, you know, they do catch people cheating, but if you're cheating, you're going to get caught. Now, see, one thing that I will agree with a lot of people on is that the big spectacle of the Bassmaster style weigh-ins is completely more entertaining. Like, I love it. I've been there before. I went to the Bassmaster Classic, and man, I tell you what, watching those boats pull in and all those people in the stadium and people cheering as they pull out these giant fish out of live wells and do all that, like, it's super entertaining. And I just think that the sport has evolved so much. There's a lot more fishing pressure that, like, things need to change. So what I really want to do was back this up with science and use science to prove the points that I'm about to bring up in this video. This leads me to reference two different videos by Bass Fishing Headquarters that really got me thinking and researching on my own this whole subject. These two videos do a great job of getting someone thinking about the long-term fisheries impact of the way that most fishing tournaments are currently done. I also found multiple studies and scholarly articles to support and back up these claims. Both of these videos are great, and I will link them down in the description below, along with all the scientific studies that I referenced when I was making this video. After watching both of these videos, it led me to one simple conclusion, and that is that bass do not move as much as we think, and releasing tournament fish at a boat ramp is essentially changing the environmental dynamics and dispersion of fish in our fisheries. And I'm going to go through three different key aspects from these videos that support my opinion. That leads me to my first key factor of why I think that kayak fishermen have it right, and that is that bass simply don't disperse the way that most fishermen think that they do, especially after being caught and then released at a weigh-in site. It's even comical because a lot of tournament fishermen even have a nickname for these fish that you might catch around a common weigh-in site, and they call them retreads. Basically, you know, a cute little term for fish that are caught again to be used another day, kind of like a retread tire that is retreaded and repurposed to throw back on your vehicle. A study in Canada concluded the following after studying the dispersion of fish after being released in a traditional tournament style. These researchers concluded that although fish do survive and eventually return to the main basin, displacement may have broader ecological consequences, such as large-scale displacement of top predators and adverse effects on recruitment. Now, when they do refer to recruitment, that's basically fish being able to breed and grow to a certain size. They conclude that there may be merit in tournaments adopting a catch, weigh, release format instead of bringing fish to a central weigh-in location. There was another study conducted at Lake Champlain in 2011-2012. These fish were tracked using a tracking methodology to see exactly where they went after being released after a tournament. Over time, many of the bass left the Cumberland Bay where the fish were released. A majority of the radio tagged smallmouth bass, 56% actually, quickly dispersed out of the bay. Only 43% of the largemouth bass left the bay, and they did so after staying near the release site for over 2 months. Due to the amount of public fishing in the areas along the Pittsburgh waterfront, bass that remained near the release site were vulnerable to heavy recreational fishing pressure after the tournaments. And one thing that we know about recreational fishing pressure is a lot of those people that catch those fish might end up keeping it, filleting it, and eating it, which removes that fish from that body of water. The smallmouth bass left the bay using areas of boulders and gravelly shoal habitats along the nearshore margins of the lake to travel to the north or to the south. Both species avoided deep, over 60-meter deep, which is 197-foot deep water, possibly because they navigate using landmarks as well as sustained swimming effort needed to cross these areas. Only one bass, a smallmouth, returned to its approximate original capture location on the lake. And the key factor is here, if bass have everything they need where they're released, they're just going to stay. So if there's cover, forage, all those things where they're released, they might just choose to stay in that area, which kind of backs up what they found in the study. That is one reason that they might not have moved far after being released back into the lake after the tournament. But how does this affect the overall quality of bass in the entire body of water? Now they're placed in an environment where there are more fish, more competition, less forage per fish, and a lot of different factors that we can only assume probably negatively impact the fish and their overall quality of life. This also disrupts the overall diversity of the fish across the entire body of water. So wrapping up that part, let's move on to my second key factor, and that is bass mortality after being caught. So there have been multiple studies on this also, and if you're enjoying this video, please consider giving it a like, as I put a lot of research into this video and tried to give you all some good information to make the best choices for you all in the future of our sport. So there have been multiple studies on bass mortality and tournament angling. Unfortunately, it's a very dynamic issue because there's a certain percent obviously that die on the way to the weigh-in, but there are also fish that can die after being just caught and released by a regular fisherman, as in a catch, photo, release format. So that brings me to the second point of this video, and that is the mortality rate of bass after being caught. Specifically, I think that a lot of us have the idea that as long as the fish makes it in the live well to where the tournament weigh-in happens, that fish is fine, and that's not often the case. There are a lot of different factors that go into the stress that the fish endures while in the live well, and there is such a thing as delayed mortality, and that is where a fish might make it through the weigh-in, be alive, but then it's released, and due to the overall stress ends up succumbing and then dying off once the fish is released. So there was a study on Sam Rayburn where tournament anglers were found that around 6 to 28% of bass that were caught ended up dying. And then they also, during that study, found that 10 to 31% of catch and release angler, just average angler fish, also passed away after being caught and released. So this brings up something that makes the water a little bit more muddy when it comes to the issue, and that is per capita for a body of water, there are usually about 4 times as many regular recreational anglers on a body of water than there are tournament anglers. And I know personally for the area around here, they usually have, like on the local lake, they have like a weekly Thursday night tournament, and they might have a tournament on the weekend. So if you think about that, let's say that 2 days out of the week they might have a tournament on that body of water. So that's only around 20% of the total fishing pressure on that body of water. So it makes sense that on the body of water, more fish are probably going to pass away and die from recreational anglers than anything. So what I gather from all this is I think that we all need to do a better job as far as fish care and how we take care of fish after we catch them and get them back in the water as soon as possible. But I think there's always going to be some mortality whenever we're catching fish and releasing them. But I do think that anything we can do to help this situation to make it better, I think that we really should do. And I think part of that is that if we could remove the stress from moving fish across the lake during a traditional tournament style weigh-in, I think that we owe that to the future of the sport. If you're interested in more information on that specific subject, I will link that video down below that goes into way more detail about fish mortality. And from what I found doing my own research is that it's just not a clear-cut issue that easily says that, hey, tournament fishing is bad and catching fish and putting them in a live well is bad. It's just, there's a lot of different dynamics to it. So the final aspect that I don't think any of these videos touch on is what I consider the spawning and biodiversity implications that moving all these fish has on the overall quality of fish in the fishery. So if you look at a program like the Texas Share-a-Lunker program, if you don't know what that is, you're probably not a bass angler, so I'd assume most of you do. But just to explain, if you catch a fish over a certain size, you can choose to call up the Texas Department of Fish and Wildlife and you link up with them to give them the fish. They basically breed that fish because that fish obviously has really good genetics to get as big as it got. So they want to pass on those genetics to the future class of fish that they breed and stock for Texas lakes. So if you think about the fact that these regular style tournaments, moving fish in their live well, have the opportunity to move 5 fish per boat to a completely new destination, removing that fish from the habitat that it was in before and pushing all those fish into a very contained area, you're going to be changing the whole biodiversity, the genetic makeup of an entire part of the lake. So it's going to have more competition. So if they are still spawning, there's going to be more competition in that smaller part of the lake. You've removed that fish from its original environment where maybe it's a better environment for the fry and it's a better environment overall. There's more space, there's less competition. So I don't know the scientific aspect of all of these things, but based on my Eastern Kentucky just average fishing guy mind, I would say that if they did a study on this aspect, that they would find that it would probably really hamper the future of the fish in a body of water. So overall, I think that if I look at all of these factors combined, I really think that kayak anglers or the major league fishing format are really the future of what tournament fishing should look like for the future of our bodies of water and the future of the sport. Do you agree? Maybe you disagree. It ain't up to me, so if you do or don't, comment down below and let me know what you think. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I'm just an average fisherman that has a love for the sport. I love fishing, and I just really want the best of fishing opportunities for my kids in the future and all those other kids out there that are growing up right now that would be much better off with a rod and reel in their hands than something else. So as always, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget, get outside, do something awesome, and take somebody with you if you get a chance, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And if you don't mind checking out one of these 2 videos here, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you guys again later.